Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back, everybody. Good to see you again for this last substantive session of the Social and Solidarity Economy Academy on Partnerships and Ecosystems. This session is titled Partnerships for an Inclusive and Sustainable Development, Social and Solidarity Economy, Ecosystems Beyond COVID-19. And it is my pleasure to welcome our moderator for today, Mr. Vic van Vuuren. You've met him before. Mr. Vic van Vuuren is the Director of the Enterprises Department of the ILO headquarters in Geneva. He is also the chair of the UN Task Force on Social and Solidarity Economy. Thank you again for being with us, Vic, here, and I give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Linda, and welcome everyone. I'm usually given this task because I've got a big voice, but I'm not necessarily the expert. And we've got some great experts on our panel today to talk on the topic that Linda's just introduced. We're going to have 3 videos during the course of today's session, and we have 4 panelists, and hopefully our 4th panelist will be joining us. There seems to be a linking problem. And I'd like to introduce the panelists, but first let me mention the 3 videos that we'll be hearing. The one will be from Mr. Marvin Rodríguez Cordero, the Vice President of the Government of Costa Rica. And the second video will be Mr. Zacarias da Costa, CPLP's Executive Secretary. And the third will be Ms. Yolanda Díaz, the second Vice President of the Government of Spain and Minister for Work and Social Economy. They will not be running consecutively. We'll have a video, then we'll have some of our experts' input. And let me introduce our live panelists. We have Mr. Vitor, Ramalho, General Secretary.
Vou apresentar agora os nossos panelistas.
Speaking Capital Cities, UCCLA.
Aqui vocês vão poder ouvir, então.
Second is Ms. Antonella Noya from the OECD, who's a good friend of ours, and as well, all of, in fact, are good friends of the institutions we work in. And next will be Mr. Yvon Poirier from RIPESS, and lastly, Laurence Kwark from GSEF. So thank you very much for joining us and being part of our show today. So without any further ado, we're going to start with our first video, which will be the video from Mr. Marvin Rodríguez Cordero, Vice President of Costa Rica. And I now hand it back to the technicians to put the video on for us.
Del Gobierno de Portugal y a la Organización Internacional de Trabajo, y les externo mi agradecimiento por hacer posible la celebración de la 12ª edición de la Academia de Economía Social Solidaria. Aprovecho también la oportunidad para saludar a los equipos técnicos, personas expertas y participantes de esta 12ª Academia. Esta es una de las instancias más importantes para reunir a especialistas académicos.
This is one of the most important instances to bring together academics, specialists, leaders, and representatives of the associative economies, government authorities, of international organizations to analyze and reflect on the trends and needs of the sector, but also to build intersectoral working networks. For this reason, I am proud to share with you again and during this last day of activities, the experience of our country in promoting public policies that foster the generation of prosperity, distributing justice and environmental responsibility, identifying in the social economy different organizational and business expressions, and one of the most powerful instruments to accomplish this task. The subject that concerns us is of the greatest relevance in this current situation, and it's not by chance that the urgent socioeconomic and ecological transformation of our planet is linked to the SSE, because the associative economy is an economy for life. We cannot speak of a global development agenda and an economy that puts the person at the center of it without putting the ecosystem sustainability at the center of our efforts to achieve the development. Sarah Burrow, General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, sums it up in a sentence. There will be no jobs on a dead planet. That sentence can be applied to all human activities. There will be no economy, development, prosperity, or justice on a dead planet. The responsibility for the current health crisis rests with the human beings. After improper handling, particularly over the last 200 years of our relationship with nature, and for having apparently interpreted that we are the center of the development. But we are just a part of a complex ecosystem, and we depend on the ecosystems. The COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting socioeconomic crisis urges us to urgently rethink about our relationship with the environment, as well as the prevailing failed social and environmental contract. But the emergency also offers the opportunity to promote a reconstruction beyond a simple recovery, as well as new models of production and consumption that eliminate the negative actions that led to this situation. In these moments, Costa Rica considers that the environmental agenda is an important vehicle to rebuild based on models of sustainable development with a systemic approach to generate the well-being for all. Now is the moment to permeate all administrative and productive sectors with the principles and values of that agenda, without which the economic reconstruction has no sense, because it would be like rebuilding on something that failed. So the effort for this dream transformation requires the greatest possible ambition in commitments and concrete actions, and also a uniformity across all sectors, private companies and civil societies. Costa Rica wants that every dollar designed to reconstruction is inverted with that idea of sustainability, no matter what is the subject that will receive the money. This vision is accompanied and shared with a leader from European Union and others. And in this systemic reconstruction, Costa Rica is leader, together with France, the coalition of high ambition for nature and people. This is a coalition of governments committed with the sustainable development that wants to protect the 100% of continental and oceanic territories for the year 2030. And Costa Rica opposes to any subsidies to fossil and any subsidies to activity that are going to damage the ecosystems. We firmly think that we must promote the transformation of those subsidies in green incentives and to implement taxes to activities that pollute in an ambitious way. We must propose ourselves the reconversion of all the production and consuming of the energy in the planet based on clean energy, and helping the industry that uses well the energy to generate jobs and substitute operative costs. The solutions based in nature must turn in an essential part of our international action and in national practices. We must promote its extensive implementation on all scales and promote its funding. And We have to back the solution based in the nature, and we have the strong commitment, and we already did it for the clean energy, the clean water, and the participation in the management in the states. And Ostrom said SSE is a powerful tool to avoid the tragedy of all. And we have to talk to associations and communities to use in a sustainable way their resources. And we want to help those people to keep our planet and our nature. In synthesis, our crisis, today's crisis, it's the right moment to foster a transformation and go to an economy for life that ensures the protection of our planet. Only this way we will be able to put the human beings in the center, and the SSE is probably the most suitable mechanism to do it, because it unites both principles through models that are based on the human beings. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Vice President of Costa Rica. And that is certainly a good link between the environment and SSE, because I think as we go forward, we need to make sure we don't operate in silos as we seek solutions to the global challenges. It gives me great pleasure now, and it's an honor to introduce our first speaker, who will be Ms. Antonella Noya from the OECD. Antonella, the floor is yours, but I'd like to ask you a question in introducing you as well, in that we know that SSE partnerships are so important, and what makes them particularly effective in times like COVID and these challenges that we face? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vic. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So I would like to use my 5 minutes to present a kind of partnership that OECD knows very well, because it has helped, created, and implemented them. And these are the peer learning partnerships. And I think that at least the panelists, but maybe someone else in the audience, has already had the opportunity to listen about this partnership. So first of all, what is peer learning? Peer learning is indeed a very powerful way to stimulate collective thinking, to develop innovative solutions to many challenges, including those that have been just mentioned, and also to share knowledge and ideas. And the OECD, with the support of the European Commission, has created 6 peer learning partnerships. That is partnership in which many social economy actors are from different continents, from Europe, but also from Brazil, Mexico, India, United States, and so on, are getting together, including with other stakeholders, public sector, academic, and so on. And they have been created to work on specific issues which are very, very important, and are, for instance, a legal framework for social economy, social impact measurement, how to adapt ecosystem, local ecosystem for social economy after the COVID crisis, and so on and so forth, internationalization, gender, and so on and so forth. And so through these 6 consortia, some 130 actors got together to discuss, and they worked through meeting, online meeting, bilateral opportunities, and so on and so forth. And they are at the end of their work now, and we are organizing an event next week, and I will put the link on the chat for you to register in case you want to hear from the result of this partnership. But what I would like to say now is what has made them effective, because this is the question we are asking, Vitor. So paradoxically, I would like to say that if it is not COVID itself, of course, which has made this partnership effective, COVID continues to be really a strong motivation and a push for social economy organization to be active more than ever, because COVID itself has put the social economy under the spotlight and has made evident to everyone the important role that social economy has played. So having this said, so I think that this kind of peer learning partnership that we have contributed to create have been effective because there has been a whole global community that has been created in a time in which it is very difficult to travel, it is very difficult to meet together. So the creation of this open space in which everyone can gather, because they had to use technology, digital technology, of course, to meet, has been very important. And the notion itself of proximity has been very interpreter, because all these people working, a small social economic organization from Belgium has been able to keep discussing with Canada, Brazil, India. So the proximity has been rethought. And so this open space, it has become a space of virtual proximity. Second factor of effectiveness is, of course, the use of digital technology, and I maybe will develop a bit more on this later on. And then, of course, the fact that we pushed this partnership to produce concrete results. So they had an objective. They have an objective to stay together, and they had to shake their brain, to change their ideas, and to come up to the OECD with some concrete results, ideas on how to improve ecosystems. And they had the opportunity doing so also to discuss and to align the different idea understanding. And so I think this forced them also to be effective themselves. And I think that another element for their effectiveness is a motivational one, because now that they know well each other, even if the work with the OECD is ending, I think that they will want to remain together, and they will want to remain visible, and they will want to keep momentum for social economy and for the network themselves. I am done here.
Thank you very much, Antonella. That's great. I think to hear the practical examples and successes is something we don't do enough of. So we're moving from Europe, and I'm assuming, Yvon, that you're in Canada. And so we'd like to ask you to address the same question about partnerships and what makes them particularly effective during these difficult times. And I understand that you'll be speaking in French, so please, those of you who are not sure, make use of the interpretation services that are available. Over to you, Yvon.
Merci, Vic. Je vais commencer en parlant.
Thank you. I started with my practical examples that we have. And in the second round of questions, I will enter into detail. I have a couple of examples of what has been done. And during the crisis, COVID-19, the Mali artisans created cooperatives and associations, and they were able to bring out important solutions, especially in terms of procurement of raw materials on a local level to replace exports. And we also know that they were able to procure very high quality materials, certainly less expensive than the previous materials that were exported, and also mechanical equipment for washing hands. And they were locally manufactured during this time by SSE people, and also masks that were prepared from local textiles, so certainly less expensive than the exported ones. As far as the masks are concerned, well, it was a certainly important procurement, of course, from this African network of artisans or manufacturers. There is a textile factory in Mali, but also in other regions of Western Africa, because products on a global level come from Bangladesh and so on, and also food processing. Well, in this case, it was for the local consumption, local distribution, and also semi-packaged, as I say, food products prepared by Mali operators. And these are concrete examples of how we responded to the crisis. And also another example from India, an organization called ASEFOR, and it is an association of villages with several villages with 4 or 5 million people. So it's huge. It started in the 80s. It has had a long history. And in fact, it was very important for the development of these communities. These are very specific. They employ 2,700 people in difficulty, especially women and disabled. And they also supported them financially. In 4 villages in particular in this region, they organized also delivery at home for 120 families during 155 days. And it was a sort of a global canteen, community canteen that was organized. And in fact, it benefited people in a high number, like 700 meals a day. So in supporting the livelihood of the people of this Indian region. Schools were closed for 18 months, including the schools within the associations. They also run schools there. For instance, they set up a system with mobile phones, because in every single family, usually there is at least one mobile phone. They were able then to install and use a WhatsApp system to communicate and to provide lessons online. In villages, there was no access to the Wi-Fi, to mobile phones. Well, they distributed iPads that were given by a multinational company in India, and they helped in the regions. Farmers couldn't move due to the lockdown. They had to stay locked, and they organized 27 trees that were planted. And this is an example of an orchard that was created just for that reason. And after that, fruits will be sold on the market after a few years. They also established a credit, let's say, a service, in terms of, it was a microfinance initiative. And then when lockdowns were little by little eliminated, they started up their own small businesses, particularly women. Thank you. This is the experience.
Thank you very much, Yvon. And that was great to hear from your perspective from within the RIPESS stable. We're now going to move across to South Korea. I'm assuming that's where you are, Laurence, in Seoul. And it's great to have you on board. And also, if you can give us some of your reflections on the effectiveness of the SSE organizations during this difficult time. Over to you, Laurence.
Thank you very much, Vic. Good morning and afternoon to you all, speakers, participants, and organizers of the 12th edition of the Social Solidarity Economy Academy. Since 2020, the dramatic global context caused by the COVID-19 have shown us how fragile our territories can be, as its consequences have infected all spheres of our society and economy, more particularly aggravating the situations of people living in poverty and inequality. At the same time, we have seen so many cases of good and innovative practices of social solidarity economy through intercooperation of social economy enterprise and organizations who have acted to provide immediate and relevant social services to meet other needs of citizens, such as healthcare services, food shortages, loss of employment, unequal access to the basic needs, technologies, and digital transition and educational opportunities, etc. But for me, I can say the social solidarity economy partnership we know best through the GSEF network are the partnership between social solidarity economy organizations, enterprise, and local government, who have responded in partnership and collectively to the COVID-19 crisis. And thanks to their partnerships, the impact of their actions have been immediate, effective, and important to meet the critical needs of citizens, greatly contributing to develop conducive ecosystem for social solidarity economy, especially in countries where the legal and institutional frameworks and measures in favor of social solidarity economy are rather weak and non-existent. Some of our local government members, understanding the strength and role of social solidarity economy, have quickly implemented special and tailored support programs for social solidarity economy, working in partnership with local social solidarity economy organizations in the relief and prevention work to fight COVID-19 pandemic. For example, the city of Praia in Capo Verde entrusted social solidarity economy sectors and volunteers to implement emergency food basket delivery program to the vulnerable household. RAMSES, the National Association of Local Government in Cameroon, implemented tax exemption program for youth and women social solidarity economy organizations. Many governments, city of Mondragon, Taipei City, Liverpool City, Seoul, Nouvelle-Aquitaine region of France, etc., also have provided financial support, subsidies, and new aid program for social solidarity economy organizations to reinforce their capacities to deliver better services. There are a number of local governments who have developed more extensive support measures for the social solidarity economy sectors. For example, City of Montreal, which has implemented 2 economic recovery plans in 2020 and 2021 to help social solidarity economy actors to recover from the impact of COVID-19. They have also presented Montreal 2030 strategic plan in December 2020, which is a strategic orientation for next 10 years for more resilient, green, and inclusive city, prioritizing the importance of developing a greener and more inclusive economy through supporting circular economy, social economy, local and eco-responsible facing, and the creation of new quality ecological jobs. So what makes social solidarity economy particularly effective in times of the COVID-19 crisis? I think that social solidarity economy has become the focal point for the social innovations, especially in times of crisis, as they take into account local needs, resources, and priorities to their business model in order to better respond to social needs. Social solidarity economy actors know very well about need of communities, capable to mobilize multiple resources and stakeholders as they put social and public missions before their private entrepreneurial needs. They are able to gather various stakeholders and supporters around their project, innovating their business model in a very flexible manner, as we have seen some even changed or stopped temporarily their business in order to respond to the urgent need of citizens. Social economy business models are unique in a number of ways as they adopt inclusive and democratic governance principles, and they involve and empower diverse stakeholders in their decision-making process by facilitating informed decisions about economic and social impact. Social solidarity economy actors are locally anchored, strong in their expertise, understanding what works and what doesn't work in the local context. And so they are particularly well suited to respond quickly to issues that arise in their local areas by bringing their synergies towards an inclusive and sustainable development. Thank you. I think I will stop here and I will wait for the next question.
Thank you, Laurence, for that great input. Much appreciated. You know, one of the things that I've learned, and we're going to go into the next round of questions after the next video, is that in the last few years, being involved in the debate at the global level on the social and solidarity economy, is that when it comes to its potential, it must be one of the world's best kept secrets. I think we've got such huge potential in scaling up the work of social and solidarity economy players to the point that we can make a much bigger impact on these global challenges. We're now going to, or you might have wondered what's happened to our fourth speaker, Vitor, from the, let me just get his title here, from the General Secretary of the Union of Portuguese-speaking Capital Cities. Unfortunately, he's had a problem linking in to the session, and if he does join, we will allow him to speak a little later, but we'll carry on with the program in the meantime. We're now going to go to our next video, which is going to be from the Honorable Zacarias de Costa, CPLP's Executive Secretary, which is the, I understand, the Community of Portuguese Language Countries is what it stands for. And so let's listen to the video.
Senhor Presidente da Cooperativa, António Sérgio.
Chairman of the Community of Portuguese Language Countries, Antonio Sergio, Director of ILO Lisbon, Mafalda Tasha. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is a great pleasure to take part in this high-level session of this edition on the social economy of ILO. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the key consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic was basically to expose social and economic inequalities and the difficulty to access basic healthcare and social needs. COVID-19 exacerbated inequality and disparities within and between countries. And the most disadvantaged groups and the marginalized groups were most affected. The Community of Portuguese Language Countries, therefore, highlights the need to reinforce multilateralism and international cooperation in a spirit of global solidarity and shared responsibility. CPLP urges the international community to provide answers in the medium and short and long term be based on human rights and the right to development. Also, this should be in line with the United Nations Secretary Social Covenant. Human rights are at the basis of the CPLP agenda and underpins everything we do when it comes to sustainable development. In addition, CPLP deems it fundamental not to leave anyone behind. It is not just mere rhetoric in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is a key aspect that really prompts us to try and implement the 2030 agenda in the post-COVID era. Ladies and gentlemen, as I have already mentioned, the social and economic consequences of the COVID-19 pandemics can wipe out decades of development and fight against poverty and exacerbate inequalities and disparities. In line with the 2021 World Bank report that was published last October, the COVID-19 pandemic devastated economies and hit very hard many people. According to this report, in 2020, 100 million people fell below the poverty line, and between 720 and 800 million went hungry, more than 161 million than compared to 2019. Schools were closed, and so 1.6 billion students simply stopped going to school, stunting their cognitive development, if you want, and their learning. Also, many non-transmissible and preventable diseases were not treated due to the healthcare emergency, and there was also an increase in gender-based violence, especially against women and girls, because they were those who mostly lost their jobs and stopped going to school. Now, given this situation, we really need to rethink the current social and economic structures in order to rebuild the post-COVID recovery. Therefore, it will be fundamental to reinvigorate international dialogue and build more inclusive and equitable societies. Policies must be aligned with the far-reaching goals of the 2030 Agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, I am convinced that it is important here to mention the report entitled Social Just Transition for Sustainable Development, the Role of Digital Technology for the Well-Being of Everyone. It was published on the 23rd of November 2020. The Secretary General of the United Nations here stressed the importance of a just social transition to achieve a more equitable, resilient form of sustainable development. The Secretary General also highlights the need to really focus on the groups and the most disadvantaged and marginalized people. But he also highlights that social and solidarity economy must be considered as a viable alternative option that aims at striking a balance between economic efficiency and social and environmental resiliency. This will empower people by having more of a say in decision-making processes. The social and solidarity economy encourage social dynamism as well as environmental protection. It is fundamental that as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we must consider social and solidarity economy as a fundamental strategy to improve our world. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have 9 years before the end of the 2030 Agenda. And so we really need to tackle the interconnections between the social and economic links between society and environment. We really need to work for a just social transition based on people and based on social justice. Solidarity economy is a key driver in this. The CPLP is ready to tackle this challenge, to take up this challenge. We think that the political and economic empowerment of vulnerable groups through the social and solidarity economy will contribute to the respect of many fundamental human rights. And this challenge is part of our statutory mission. I would like to mention here a few examples of our cooperation. We work with a multiplayer and multi-level cooperation. We adopt an across-the-board vision to really bring together different sectoral strategies. CPLP supports different activities like food and nutritional security, as well as fight against child labor. Tripartite social dialogue are examples of how our community can promote a model of social and solidarity economy. We confirm our commitment, and we will keep reinforcing our networks and assess the potential for further cooperation with civil society and our observers, so that we can promote initiatives related to SSE to implement and achieve the 2030 agenda and the sustainable development goals that are strictly connected with it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you to Zacarias de Costa for that video input, which was also extremely interesting and valuable for this discussion. I just want to point out that in the chat column, you'll see that Antonella Noya put a link to the OECD event on peer learning partnerships, that you can find the link there. Also, thank you to Musa Al-Hassani for putting the example of Niger that is similar to that which is going on in Mali, and also to Rosabelle Garay, who pointed out the vulnerable groups and the youth and the micro enterprises and the importance of those groups in the discussion. I've got a few questions that I've noted. If we've got time, we'll come to those questions, but I would now like to go to the panelists again in the same order. And we've heard about these examples of SSE and the networks, but how can we improve these networks to further help contributing to an inclusive and sustainable development? You've heard me say that SSE is like the best kept secret for a little church of people that sees the value of it, but we don't take it any further. Antonella, let's hear from you.
Thank you very much. And Yvon is totally right. But I think that since the last few years, thanks God, this secret is being spread. And of course, partnership have also a role in spreading it further. So this is a difficult question, Vic, how to improve existing networks. So out of the observation of some partnership that we have looked during the COVID period, but also, to be honest, looking more in depth into this peer learning partnership that we have contributed to create, I would say that what really could improve SSE's network, because most of them are local, but both local and international, like the panel that are represented in this, like the networks that are represented in this panel by Laurence and Yvon. I think that what could make, in general, networks more effective, more impactful, so what could really improve them would be to connect social economy organizations to policymakers, connect social economy organizations to those kind of traditional business, because there is a gap to fill, and there is a way also for traditional business to learn from social economy organizations, to better understand what they could provide, and possibly then to develop even commercial partnership. There are great examples, for instance, of private business procuring services from social economy organizations. But these actors of the economy are not often linked. So partnership could be also a way to connect them. And obviously, I think that a way to improve existing or future social economy networks would be to connect them to international organizations such as OECD, and the peer learning partnership is a good practice on this. But even what we have done together Vic, with the United Nations Task Force, which you lead, we were a small bunch of international organizations, and then we started to open up to a number of observers. And then we are creating a link also to make these actors closer to our organization, and therefore closer also to the policymakers. But I think that there are another couple of elements which are missing, and influencers are very important. Journalists are very important. So I think that it is important that SSC's networks try really to reach them, to reach out to these categories. And I would also suggest two other things. As I was mentioning before, we know a lot of national networks, and they are doing very well, and they are really important to address the national and local challenges. But now it is the right moment to internationalize social economy as a way to do business while having a very powerful impact on social challenges, environmental challenges. And so the way to do so could also be to connect these networks to global networks, so that the impact can multiply, and the models provided by the social economy can then be spread. And it is very difficult to do so, of course, but as I was mentioning in my previous intervention, technology is here to help. One does not necessarily want and need to travel from one part of the world to go to another part of the world. So helping these networks also to use more digital tools to develop this capacity to be able really to be wherever at the same time seems to me a good thing in order to help them to contribute better to inclusive and sustainable development. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you for that. And we welcome to the panel Mr. Vitor Ramalho. Mr. Ramalho, I'll get to you in a moment. I'm going to allow you just to listen to the next two respondents, and then I'll ask you to come in and give your input. So I'm going to go to Yvon first, then to Laurence, then I'll go to you, Vitor, to give your response to this question. So Yvon, you've heard the question: how can we improve existing SSE networks to further help contributing to this inclusive and sustainable development? Yvon, you've got the floor.
Oui, merci. Les exemples que j'ai mentionnés
Well, the
tantôt,
example that I just mentioned.
Sorry, just a second. I had to remove the interpretation here because otherwise I hear myself. Sorry.
You just need to mute your.
Yes, I know.
Mute the original audio.
Yes, just a second. Just a second. Okay, merci.
Thank you, then. Yes, actually, the examples that I described show how organizations that are large with several members, they include hundreds of organizations, thousands of people, are certainly able to respond to basic needs of communities. Small isolated organizations do have limits. It is difficult for them to work with the state or municipalities or even international agencies that might be involved. However, they were equally able to develop and respond to the needs, as I said, because they have lots of different links with other organizations. They are acknowledged as being important for the communities. There are other similar organizations in several countries which respond to fundamental needs of people. And in fact, they were not known to the neoliberal systems. So being poor, well, and being included, gender equity, I mean, they were not always taken into account as problems. Universal access to social protection and health care. Well, the SSE are certainly adopting this inclusive approach because the SSE economy is certainly local and more fragmented. Since I was involved personally in these networks, are major difficulties among other difficulties. Well, in most cases, they lack skills and companies. The World Bank and similar organizations do finance the organizations and the networks. When they are essential, it is essential to have the networks able to act together with all other networks, creating regions of provincial areas. At that level, it is essential because they gain negotiating power. And with the African Development Bank and other institutions, such organizations, well, they are working on a volunteer or a charitable basis. They sometimes cannot pay for the very working of the networks. They need for external support. So it is extremely difficult to identify them sometimes because international organizations, they operate in the major economies and they finance large infrastructural projects. Not necessarily they can be translated into something interested to all the smaller communities, small countries. To tell you that we can certainly show that within the SSE there are very small enterprises like the examples I gave you on Mali. So they need support. And there are also examples in Canada, small enterprises emerging in the SSE survive in the long run much better than other traditional enterprises because they are supported by a network. And with the resolution of the UN next year, well, there'll be a new strengthening of the abilities of the potential of these organizations. And thank you.
Thank you, Yvon, for that input. And I'm going to go straight on to save time to Laurence, and then I'll come to Vitor for the next comment. So over to you, Laurence.
Thank you very much, Vic. How to improve existing social solidarity economy networks? I would say first by listening to social solidarity economy actors to know better about their concerns and how better strengthen their capabilities in order to scale up their potentials based on their successes and failures. I think it's a critical time for government as well as other economic and political decision makers to engage in active dialogue on how to institutionalize collaboration with social solidarity economy stakeholders and particularly with social solidarity economy networks to reinforce their capacities to better leverage their potentials to develop markets for social solidarity economy enterprise through public procurement, and also to build a nationwide and strong social solidarity economy networks to allow social solidarity economy to better engage in an institutional and political dialogue with government in the national economic strategies and build back better strategy from COVID-19 crisis. I believe that an institutional recognition and mechanism to better support social solidarity economy network is very important to improve existing social solidarity economy networks, but also it's very important to align all existing policies, good and innovative initiatives to support social solidarity economy networks, including legal and financial measures, in order to maximize their impact, especially to give a political and operational coherence at the national and international level. And I think this could be done not only by government, but also by UN agencies and intergovernmental organizations and international development agencies. That's why I think it is so important that ILO has decided to have a general discussion on social solidarity economy and the promotion of decent work at the 110th International Labour Conference in June 2022, as well as the current effort of UN Task Force for Social Solidarity Economy and some government to introduce a UN resolution on SSE at the 2022 UN General Assembly. I believe that it is equally important that local, regional, and national government to align their public policies in favor of not only promoting individual social enterprise, but particularly territorially based social solidarity economy networks to avoid policy incoherence. When it's needed, I think that those governments who are searching for or developing those legal and political frameworks should be accompanied by relevant UN agencies and international development organizations to make greater impact of their actions for the social solidarity economy networks. It is, I think, critical time to explore transformative capacities and potential of social solidarity economy that should be channeled more effectively through social solidarity economy networks, especially to lead a transitional process of our economy to be more sustainable and inclusive. I think the most important thing to do is to improve existing social solidarity economy network, especially by involving social solidarity actors in making all relevant policies and programs directed to them, and particularly to social solidarity economy networks, and co-create those relevant policies and programs with them, so that social solidarity economy stakeholders should be always part of those discussions and negotiations at all times. This is a sine qua non for us. One more thing that I think that can improve existing social solidarity economy network is probably to consolidate the training institutions and capacity building programs directed to social solidarity economy actors. So equally that we can reproduce the leaders and representative of social solidarity economy networks who are really capable in federating of the potentials and role of social solidarity economy actors, and also sectors across the economy and society. I believe that it is a critical time for the social solidarity economy to be integrated into also educational curricula, not only from at the university level, but also from secondary school to institutions of higher education. So the general public can better understand about the role and importance of social solidarity economy, and can support not only individual enterprise, but also general social solidarity economy networks, as well as ecosystem of social solidarity economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurence. I'm now going to turn to Vitor. We're in the second question on the panel discussion regarding how do we improve existing SSE networks to help contribute to this inclusive and sustainable development. The floor is yours, and to make any other comments that you would have made in the introduction as well. So thank you for joining us, and you have the floor.
Antes de mais nada, queria pedir desculpa.
First of all, I would like to apologize for joining late, but I had a last-minute problem. I would like to pay tribute to this initiative. I am the Secretary General of the Union of Portuguese-speaking Capital Cities, which is the oldest institution when it comes to building relationships between capital cities that speak Portuguese, like Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde, Sao Tome and Principe, Angola, Mozambique, Brazil, East Timor, and of course, Portugal. At this moment, there are some 50 countries that are associated. I remember the institution I represent is UCCLA, and there are also 20 companies that support this institution. We work on different fronts in developing relationships between Portuguese-speaking countries. In addition to the capital cities, there are also special administrative regions like Macau. Since 1985, Macau is a member of our institution. China considers that Macau is like a gateway to all of Portuguese-speaking countries, and a cooperation forum was created. In addition to Macau, there are another 2 cities in Spain, Santiago de Compostela. It is the capital of Galiza. It's an autonomous region. They are also a member, as well as Olivença. And the reason why they are members is the historical relationship with Portugal. Now, here we are discussing the consequences of COVID-19 pandemic. And I must say that we worked very closely with the city administration of the different cities. What sort of concerns did we come across? First of all, we provided education for development. And what do I mean by that? Well, it means promoting educational activities in schools involving children. We focus very much on the educational side because since 5 of our countries are African, the average age of the majority of people in these countries is very low. And some of these African countries have an average age nationally that is lower than 18 years. And so that entails a very, if you want, tricky development issue, because the future is at stake here, and most of that population is of school age. And what happened is that in order to survive, they need to drop out from school. And so we really focused on promoting education for development. And we implemented different initiatives. For instance, we work very closely with city administrations in Cape Verde, but also in Mozambique and in Guinea-Bissau, as well as Portugal. And the objectives there are quite varied, but the focus is always development. At the moment, we are working with Maputo, Mozambique's capital city, as well as in Ilha de Moçambique. The bulk of these initiatives focus on children's education And the idea is to meet and allay the concerns linked to COVID, because COVID exacerbated inequalities. How do we do that? Well, by providing personal protective equipment like masks, and we work with city administrations is fundamental, because working closely with the city administrations and financing programs can really help us. We are also focusing on the cultural side. For instance, during the pandemic, we really got in touch with all people that were basically identified by our social network, by collecting texts, and by that I mean collecting the descriptions of their concerns. All of these contributions, written contributions, were put together in a book. And that was extremely useful, because it takes into account all of the concerns that were voiced. Then work and labor is also fundamental. You see, the problem with the informal economy is less marked in Europe than in Africa. In Africa, the informal economy is key. And that's why we want to raise awareness with public entities, basically the central government and the local city administrations, to work together to basically legalize or formalize this informal economy. The idea is to bring all of these workers under a legal umbrella. We know that the percentage of informal economy in Africa is very high, especially in Portuguese-speaking Africa. There's also the issue of high unemployment rate in the formal economy. This is also one of our priorities. That's why we tried to focus our reaction to the pandemic through state incentives or state aid programs. All of these issues that once again are a consequence of the pandemic aim at protecting the dignity of work, as well as to protect workers in the informal economy. As you probably are well aware, the situation in Africa and in African cities, both in terms of youth, is very different from what is going on in Europe, of course. Most of the population in Europe is either old or aging, and also in Brazil things are quite different. The demographics in Brazil has a different pattern as well. If you look at Portugal, and also if you look at the two Spanish cities, the demographic profile is different. And there we focus mainly on the learning of the Portuguese language and culture. And we also focus on countries where Portuguese is, of course, very strong, like Brazil, where it is a mother tongue. And we also work with African countries where Portuguese is an official language, like Cape Verde. Let Angola as well, Portuguese is quite strong, because you see, the Portuguese language can be an economic tool. And think also of China and Macau, which acts as a gateway to China. And to finish off, we created a forum to implement partnerships with companies, and the allowance there is about $20 million. We clearly focus on children, on education. We focus on direct work with schools, as well as collaborating with city administrations. And clearly, it is necessary to react and to provide answers, especially now where we have a new variant of the virus, the new South African variant. And of course, the European countries are already reacting by closing off borders. And imagine how tough it can be for countries that are in Africa and therefore are closer to this threat. I would like to thank you very much. Once again, apologies for joining late. As I said, there was something unexpected that really took me off guard. I had to get in touch with Antonio Sergio, the chairman, but I reassured him that I would do everything I could to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vitor, for your input. That is really welcome. And you raised the point of the variant of the virus in South Africa. Well, I'm a South African, and we like being creative, but not in this way that we get a new variant.
I know.
And but now the sad thing for me is my family were coming to visit me at Christmas, and I get informed today the flights have been stopped. So that's the world we live in now. So I'll have to rely on a virtual meeting with them. Anyway, let's get on to further business. We're now going to listen to a video by the Honorable Yolanda Díaz, the second Vice President of the Government of Spain and Minister for Work and Social Economy. So over to the technicians.
Boa tarde, buenas tardes a todos y a todas.
Good afternoon to you all. I thank the invitation of the ILO for participating in this edition of the Academy of SSE, as well as the government of Portugal for organizing this meeting in the framework of his presidency of the Monitoring Committee of the Luxembourg Declaration. I believe that this initiative is helping to spread and improve the understanding of the concept of SSE, as well as how to reinforce its impact by strengthening these ties between actors of different countries. In this sense, in a context as the current one in which we are getting out of the COVID-19 crisis, I welcome the opportunity offered today to share and learn from other countries to keep and supporting the SSE. For this reason, we understood what we have to articulate a new production model that puts in the center the people. And this is what defends and do day by day all the entities of the SSE. For this reason, in Spain, we have firmly opted for this model, promoting their participation in the recovery, transformation, the resilience plan, as well as supporting the sector in international forums. Generating alliances that promote the model is essential for its success, and I therefore would like to review some of the initiatives and projects in which my country is involved, participation with which we believe that we are establishing a model of social transformation led by the SSE. And first of all, I would like to refer as a background to the celebration of this ILO Academy in Madrid in its 19th edition, organized by the ILO, this ministry, and CEPES. That edition concluded with the signing of a manifesto in which the bet was shown, decided by SSE as an inclusive model, socially innovative, sustainable, and that consolidates the social model and welfare states. Second, and taking the advantage of the organization of the Academy by Portugal, I would like to mention our active role in the follow-up committee, the Luxembourg Declaration. From the beginning, we have been really involved, being able to highlight the presidency that we held during the past 2020, and that we materialized in a well-nourished agenda of events in Toledo, European capital of the social economy. Thus, we concluded the exercise of the presidency with the Declaration of Toledo, where we put in value all the antecedents of statesmen of the monitoring committee, which was being leading to a consolidation of the SSE. The term of office of 2020 was difficult due to the sanitary circumstances, but we managed nevertheless to increase the presence of participating countries in the committee, and the work done by Portugal this year was continued on that path with the Declaration of Cascais as a new document, which allows us to visualize a common roadmap to follow, and that will surely be continued by in the next presidency of 2022, exercised by Italy. From the committee, well, we are awaiting the imminent approval and subsequent monitoring of the European Social Economic Action Plan. On the other hand, within the framework of this presidency of Portugal, our countries have signed a memorandum of understanding, another of the lines in which we are working to foster alliances, and that we have also signed with other countries. It is precisely in this memorandum with Portugal that we emphasize the importance of collaborating, of generating alliances, and the collaboration is precisely one of those values that are enshrined into the DNA of the companies of SSE. Together we are stronger, and that is why we commit ourselves to bring the SSE to the next Ibero-American summits, building bridges and common strategies. Finally, and to conclude, I will highlight another alliance in which we are working, and that takes us to another region, the Union for the Mediterranean. It's about a forum that unites us with the countries around us, and thus provides us with very diverse perspectives by combining countries from different continents. The Union Social Economy Workshop was recently held around the Mediterranean, where we had Portugal, Morocco, Tunis, France, Algeria, Italy, or Turkey, and we learned from all of them. In short, a set of forums and spaces that allowed us to move forward and promote the SSE, weaving global and fundamental alliances for the sector to expand more and more. I believe that the turn has come to take a step forward with the objective of building an economic model tailored to the people, with the SSE as a reference for a more inclusive model and sustainable and nothing more. I thank you again for inviting me to this event, and by ILO Portugal. Your work is very important, and thank you very much. Muito obrigada.
Thank you to Yolanda Díaz, the second Vice President of the Government of Spain. We now have a number of questions that have come up in the chat column, and unfortunately we're not going to get to all of them. So I'm going to direct different questions to different panelists, and if you can keep your answers very short, then we see how many we can get to. So Antonella, I'm going to turn to you first. And one of the questions from Sabia Melody is that, in your experience during the pandemic, is the social enterprise properly meeting all of its environmental obligations? Do you think the SSE is playing a good role in that area? Your thoughts on this?
Not sure I get exactly the question.
Okay, during the pandemic, and we also see the environmental challenges and the pandemic itself, are SSE enterprises coming up to deliver what they should be delivering, or is there a problem?
Well, from what we have observed, we said that we have seen that social enterprises and more in general social economy organization have really done miracles to continue to deliver in spite of having been obliged to quickly readjust their operational model. So I would say that in general, for some of them, they have been able to continue to deliver, including on the environmental challenges. We need to acknowledge, though, that for some of those organizations, they were heavily impacted by the financial constraints and for the fact that, for instance, they were not able to immediately sell their products on the market, and they some of these organizations were experimenting huge difficulties, and for a number of them, they had to close their operations. So this is the general response I would provide.
Thank you. Yvon, I'm going to turn to you, where there's a question from Dr. Ravichandran. And could you share the position, could you please share the position of cooperatives at the international level from the perspective of SSEs?
This varies, I'll speak in English this time. This varies from country to country and types of cooperatives. Some cooperatives, for example, the workers' cooperatives around the world are very, very close to SSE in most countries. In some other countries, it's not always the case. It depends a lot on the governance and the legislation concerning cooperatives. But there are many, for example, International Coop Alliance, Asia Pacific, just published a paper where they stress the importance of SSE in their region. So it varies from cooperative to cooperative and country to country. In Canada, for example, cooperatives are part of the SSE global movement. In the United States, many cooperatives also are close to SSE. So it varies a lot because cooperatives, some of the cooperatives are very, very big. They have on the market competing the big capitalist corporations. So they have limits to what they can do. But in general, there's been, I find personally, that there's been a lot of progress in the last 5 or 10 years to reach out and link cooperatives to SSE. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvon. I'm going to turn to you, Laurence. This is an interesting question regarding digital tools from Dr. Merrill Martin, saying that, we've used the tools of WhatsApp, Google, and Zoom, which are commercial for profit only products and services. And in essence, don't we think it's time to turn to more user environmentally friendly digital tools that are more in line with the social and solidarity economy mandate? Isn't it time to walk the talk in this regard? It's a much longer question, but I've just tried to capture the gist of that. Laurence, what do you think?
Yes, thank you very much, Vic. Also, I spotted this question. Yes, I think it's a very important question raised by the participants, and I also think that it is an urgent task and relevant probably for some big social economy organizations or some even very intelligent and creative young social entrepreneurs to look at these issues. I think it is not an impossible task. Like Wikipedia is a social enterprise which has started to build a really global network of sharing information and knowledge. That I'm not a specialist in technology, so I cannot say with more relevant response. But certainly, I think organizations like ILO or some UN agencies should look at these issues with some social solidarity economic enterprise and young entrepreneurs who have better talents in technology. And I think it is very important actually to develop some user friendly and especially user friendly for the developing countries, because there is a growing gap between developed countries and developing countries in terms of access to those technologies and global technological enterprise. I think even our organization, which has members in 36 countries, for each time when we are organizing webinars or international conference, and all our members in developing countries are following several hours with their handphones and mobile phones, and the accessibility to the connectivity and accessibility to information and knowledge are very limited for them. So I would say it's becoming a very urgent imperative for the public goods and public purposes. But unfortunately, I think it cannot be a task of an individual social enterprise or social entrepreneur. I think there should be some kind of alliance between some public organizations or international organizations and those social entrepreneurs and social enterprise. Let me just speak to respond also to first question that you have asked to OECD, the Antonella. I just, because I want to share this question from the experience of Korea. We have seen especially during the COVID-19 crisis in Korea, that the delivery industry has been so developed. So because of the packaging of those food deliveries and all kind of deliveries, that all the waste for the environmental concerns have increased and have tripled. And in Korea, it's quite interesting that that the question you have raised, whether the social enterprise and social organizations are responding or meeting this standard and these concerns from environmental perspective, I would say is extreme. I think most of social economy organizations, enterprise in Korea are very small and medium enterprise, and so they are not able to cope actually with these growing concerns despite of their values and commitment. But it's very interesting, the National Confederation of Consumer Cooperative have started to develop a different package systems and different delivery systems in order to reduce the environmental waste and also to increase the public awareness of environmental concerns. So actually that in the sector, which is dominated by big major capitalist conglomerates, that this Confederation of Consumer Cooperative are innovating their practice and business models and business practice, including ESG, environmental, social, and governance models. So I think it will be very interesting to document on those, very recent developed and innovative practice. Unfortunately, I think even in Korea that we do not have many literatures written in English and French or Spanish. Most of them are only available in Korean. But a lot of, I'm sure that a lot of those innovative practices are developing at the ground level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurence. And we've come to the end of our session. It's been a very rich session, and thank you to our experts and to the video recordings for your time and for your expert input. And thank you to the participants and for the questions. And there's been a number of really good questions. Meryl, your question is one that we certainly need to take forward in regards to the digitization and the role of the SSE. We need to see that we take up some key space in these areas as we go forward. And the same with green jobs. If we look at the whole role of where we're looking at growth in jobs in the future, it's about the environment, it's about green jobs. And we need to make sure that we don't get left behind in the new developments and discussions that are taking place. So thank you once again to all of you. Thank you to the organizers, to to all the persons behind the scene. For the interpreters, thank you. You've been great. It's always good to have good interpretation, and I've listened and tried to improve my French as we've gone along, interpreting the questions. So thank you to all of you. Do I hand back to you, Linda? And
thank you very much.
Right.
Thank you so much for your great facilitation, Vic van Vuuren. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. Thank you, all the speakers of this wonderful panel, this wonderful discussion, and thank you above all for your great commitment to create a conducive environment for the social and solidarity economy. So thanks a lot. And dear participants, stay tuned. In just an hour, we are starting the final closing session of this academy. So see you then. Thank you.